Okay, all set.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. That's the gavel. We are gavelled in at 12:02 p.m. Good afternoon. Nice to see everyone. This is the Town of Southborough, Massachusetts, virtual meeting of the Personnel Board for Wednesday, April 14th, 2021, 12 p.m. Our clerk, Ms. Jasinski, will read the required message.
Okay.
Dorianne, would you like to read the message?
Sure, no problem. Pursuant to
you.
Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Personnel Board will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Jasinski. Much appreciated. All right, just a couple of notes. This meeting is being recorded. All votes will be by roll call. And our Zoom host today, Vanessa Hale. Vanessa, could you tell us if we have any town employees in the audience? I don't see that on my screen. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Mr. Hegarty is here as well as two other residents.
Oh, two residents and Mr. Hegarty. Excellent. Thank you, Ms. Hale. Okay, the first matter of business is administrative. We have minutes in the packet of the meeting of March 22nd, 2021. That's at page 1, 2, 3, and 4. The minutes having been distributed in advance to the board. Reading is waived. Any comments or revisions from the board?
I have one correction, please.
Yes, Ms. Jasinski.
Line 74 on the second page of the minutes. It reads Mr. Nixon and Mr. Jasinski. That should be Ms. Jasinski, please.
Thank you. That correction is so noted and so made. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. The minutes are approved with that correction. Thank you. Okay. We are on to 3A reports. Just briefly, the SAP Roadshow was last week. Board of Selectmen on Tuesday, an advisory committee on Wednesday. By roadshow, I mean they invite me to come and speak about the SAP revisions for the year. Unfortunately, it coincided with me being a little unwell after my vaccine. And Barry and I guess Dorianne, you were also at the advisory committee. So Board of Selectmen wanted me to convey to the entire board their thanks for all of your work during the year. And other than applause, there were no comments from the Board of Selectmen. And I was not able to cover the advisory meeting. That was Barry in my stead and Dorianne. I don't know if either of you want to say anything about your visit to advisory.
Leave that up to Mr. Rubenstein.
Okay, Barry.
Yes, just briefly, they had no questions about our budget. No questions about the textual changes to the SAP. Few questions related to the changes regarding the schedule for firefighters and their and we're able to answer that. Jason Malinowski is their liaison with the fire department. He was very knowledgeable about that subject, and he also responded. And then there was a discussion that I guess we'll get to later. They raised questions about the status of the sick leave, vacation leave issue, which I think we'll talk about later.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Rubenstein, and thank you again for pitching in last week. I really appreciate it. All right. Anybody have any comments or questions about Board of Selectmen or advisory? All right, we're on 3B, Assistant Town Administrator Report on New Hires. That is in your packet at page 5, and I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Hale.
Thank you. So as the memo details, we have had 2 transitions since your last meeting. We have had a resignation in the office of the town clerk. You're going to hear more about that later, but Renee Chen has departed to take another position. And our IT manager, as you can see, has been appointed. As you know, we discussed that at your last meeting, as well as at the selectmen's meeting when he was appointed. So we're very excited that he'll be starting Tuesday, finally. We've been without an IT manager since Tom left the end of November. So we're anxious to have him on board next week.
All right. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Hale about the hiring memo? All right. And the second thing that I asked her to do was to give us the final copy of the IT manager hiring letter. We have discussed what form that should take, and the board had asked for some revisions, and the final document that went out is in page 6 of the packet. And one thing I was kind of curious about, and I asked Ms. Hale and Mr. Purple, I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention. This will be an exempt position, and the hiring letter states an hourly rate rather than an annual salary. So in light of the discussions that we had recently about making the proper distinction between exempt and non-exempt employees, I just raised that with them and asked them if they would recommend any changes to the hiring letter. Should the hiring letter have an annual salary? Because exempt employees work as many hours as it takes to get the job done. So it's not really truly $48.36 an hour. And Mr. Purple and Ms. Hale had some thoughts on that. And I will let them explain why they would like to leave the letter the way it is. Mr. Purple or Ms. Hale?
Well, I don't hear Vanessa unmuting, so I think
Sorry.
I'll go first. No, that's fine. So there's been some discussion, and I think Vanessa could probably speak to it better than I can. But as to offer letters and the amounts that are listed in the offer letter, oftentimes, as the chair stated, you do have the annual salary that is listed, and if the municipality decides to part ways with the employee, sometimes listing an annual salary, the employee tries to come back at the municipality for the amount that's listed in the offer letter, and so the things that we are hearing is that the offer letter should basically have the lowest increment that you can put in the offer letter, meaning either hourly rate, the biweekly pay, something along those lines, and that we should try to stay away from putting in annual salary numbers. But Vanessa can expand on that.
That's the advice we were given many years ago from our prior attorney. One thing that we have not ever really written in our hire letters, which I'm happy to add if the board thinks it's prudent, is when an employee or position is exempt or non-exempt. That's not typically been part of our letters, but we did talk with Ms. Rosenblum about that recently. So if that's something the board thinks should be in the hire letters, we could certainly start doing that.
Okay, I'm open it up for discussion. Anybody have any comments on the letter? I just note it's not exactly the language that, so if anyone follows us that precisely, it's not exactly the final letter that went out wasn't the exact language that the board dictated in the minutes. I think the part about the successful performance evaluation approved by the personnel board, but that said, the letter has gone out. Ms. Hale and Mr. Purple are open to revisions if the board has any, but I understand the reason. I wouldn't want to counter the reasoning of council that we should not put the annual in. I don't think it's my place to say if Labor Council says don't put it in, we should put it in, but I'd be happy to hear from our professionals.
Yeah, one odd question. On the
Yeah.
first sentence, why do we write this evening? Does it matter if we make the offer in the morning or at night?
No, it doesn't. It was probably, we probably had the letter ready to go as soon as the Board of Selectmen voted. So it doesn't mean anything either way.
I would think you would want it to just reflect the date.
Yeah, that's all you need. That's why I was wondering.
Okay, sure.
And
I'll
if it's
note
the
that.
day you sent the letter out, then it's Board of Selectmen voted to appoint you as IT manager at this date.
Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
you don't even need that. The date's already above his name. Just say as the IT manager, period.
Yeah, the date of the offer letter, the date of the offer is the date of the offer, so.
Yeah, it's already, and that's already the very first thing above his name.
Mr. Dietz, do you have anything to say about whether or not we should be putting in an hourly rate for an exempt manager?
Barry was gonna say something too, and then I can.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the point that's being made, but it's I think pretty common, certainly in the private sector, to an offer letter have an annual salary for an exempt employee.
I agree.
But you would also typically have language saying that you're an at-will employee to deal with that issue, to make clear that despite the fact that it says, you don't just say your salary is X, your salary per year. And if you also say that the employee is an at-will employee, I think the risk of someone coming back and claiming you promised them they would work for at least a full year is a pretty weak one, if that's the only evidence that was out there. So again, I understand the point. I just don't think, I think the weight of the evidence leans towards an annual salary, just my opinion.
And I had a couple other things on this. So first one is third paragraph. Your pay rate has been set at this. I don't think they really care that it was approved on March 22nd at a personnel board meeting. So I don't even know why that's in there. It's not their concern or anything of when the position was actually, when their salary was approved by somebody. It's the fact that here's your offer letter, here's the salary. And then second sentence is, I thought we got rid of the probationary period.
Jay, we discussed this 2 meetings ago. This might have been the meeting that you missed. The letter was presented to us and we approved everything that was in here. So if we want to go ahead, I just don't want to go back to things that 2 meetings ago we said were fine to be in there. And we're not having a 6-month probationary salary, but we kept the probationary period. And Ms. Hale and Mr. Purple wanted that in the letter. And we said, okay, because you weren't here. Do you feel strong? It is in the SAP and they felt it appropriate to draw to the attention.
Everybody should have the same offer template. Is this one going, is going forward, everybody gonna have that in their letters?
Yeah, this is a little bit of the confusion for me. I asked to see the hiring letter back several cycles ago and we got one and then it seems to keep changing in between. And then the one that we were given a couple of again, I can do a memo and give you every single draft, but they keep changing. And every time we see them, they're a little different. So at 1 or 2 meetings ago, we approved a letter. I read the language into the record of the minutes, might even be the most recent set of minutes. And yet the letter doesn't entirely match. And I'm not sure I understand the disconnect. The letter keeps evolving beyond what we see, so.
And then, so back to the probationary thing, right? So if it's just the probationary period, why does the sentence right after that say you'll be eligible for a salary adjustment based on appropriation? Aren't we giving them the salary and then they have their stuff? We're not giving them another salary adjustment after the probationary period, are we? Because that's what the letter says.
No, it's saying that after they've been here over a year, they'll be entitled to an annual salary increase.
So why even put that?
Ms. Hale.
Yeah, typically in our letters, we would want to let a new employee know when they would be eligible. So that's why that sentence is there.
I think particularly here where it's going to be more than a year before they're going to be eligible for an increase. So I think makes sense to put it in.
I think one of the issues I'm having with the letter is these employees are subject to the SAP. The SAP is a 20-page document. You're picking and choosing what parts of the SAP you want to put in the letter rather than referencing you're subject to the SAP. Right? You and Mark wanted to say 6-month probationary period, but there's lots of other stuff in the SAP that you didn't include here. And you don't say you're employed under the personnel bylaw, which is
Right.
really where I would think you would want to draw their attention, because
Sure.
that's their contract.
We'd like to get down to a template that is used, for every new employee. So if the board would like us to reformat this letter, I would like very much to, potentially work with someone on the board to come back with a firm template that is used for everyone going forward.
Yeah, and I share that 100%, and I understand you get different input from us at different meetings depending on who's present. So maybe we need to convene a little commission on hiring letters and just do this for once and for all.
Sure.
Is this an exempt or non-exempt position?
This person is not entitled to overtime.
So it's an exempt position.
It's exempt.
Right.
Yes.
So then, okay, so you should put that in there somewhere.
Yeah, that was my concern.
Because you're giving them an hourly rate as an exempt employee. An hourly rate's generally going to be a non-exempt person, which is going to get overtime. So why are you basing them on an hourly rate?
We typically will put in the hourly rate, Jay. So when this appointment letter goes to Brian's department and the first payroll is set up, they know exactly what the hourly rate is that's used in the payroll sheet.
But then that shouldn't have to go, again, that's not something that concerns the candidate.
It's
That's
true,
something-
but I was trying not to have multiple documents for every new employee. So that's why we were using the hourly rate in the hire letter.
Yeah, that's not
This
good.
struck me when I was doing the minutes and the board had to approve the salary. And when we did the motion, we did the hourly and the annual. And I said, wait a minute, this is not recognizing exempt versus non-exempt, which Jay has woken us up to. And I agree. I don't understand why the letter doesn't say your annual salary, that you're at will, and then Brian and Kristen can fully figure out what to pay the person. As Brian and I discussed this week, these adjustments have to be made depending on the pay period and we'll get to that in a minute, the multiplier for annual versus hourly. Why can't that number just be done? I don't understand why we're giving an exempt employee an hourly rate. They don't have an hourly rate.
If you break out that hourly rate, it comes to $100,588.80. Is that what we actually offered them?
No, the hours per fiscal year change every year and, Brian calculates that for us. So it
You're
wasn't
telling him that
exactly.
he's working 40 hours a week getting this. So he's going to, if he does the math, which takes 10 seconds, 4836 times 2080, that's going to give him $100,588.80. If you give him less than that, he's going to come back and say, you told me this is my hourly rate. How come I'm not getting paid that?
I would defer to Brian on the calculation of that, but it wasn't this year wasn't 2,080 hours, if I recall correctly, Brian.
Yeah, it's 2088.5. That's what you told us at last meeting. Anyway, we've got a lot of stuff to get to. I don't want to get hung up on the hiring letter.
Hold on, I got a question. There's not 2,088 hours work week in a year. There's 2,080 work hours in a year. I don't know how you're making up an additional 8 hours somewhere.
No, it's because it's because people don't work a full day, Jay. It's not
But
an
then he's
8 hour
not a
day.
full-time employee. He's an exempt employee hourly if he's not, because the letter says he's getting 40 hours a week. You're not paying him 40 hours a week. Right?
That's how you want to look at it.
That's how I would look at it if I was the employee. If I'm coming back and saying, you just told me I'm going to get 48.36 and I'm working a 40-hour week, and then he starts working and he's like, okay, now I'm only getting 37 hours a week. So his pay is going to start getting cut back. He's either going to be a non-exempt hourly employee that gets overtime, and if that's the change, then you have to change the letter that says up to 40 hours a week, Right here, you're already telling him he's gonna get 40 hours a week as a full-time role, and you're gonna pay him 48.36. If that's the case, then his salary is 100,588.80.
It's never
And
under
he could
40.
literally have it in writing and say, here's my salary.
Yeah, it's never under 40. It would never fall under 40.
Then if it's over 40, then if he's an hourly employee, he should be getting overtime.
Can I ask a question? Who drafted this letter that says a 40-hour position?
I did.
Okay. So maybe we need to convene a commission on this. If everybody wants to take a look at this letter and then send me their comments or send them to Vanessa. Jay, maybe you and I offline. I don't want to take up too much more of the board's time on this, but I find the letter confusing.
It's awful, to be honest.
It's not clear. And you're saying 40 hours and then you're given an hourly rate and you're not going to pay him that much. I think we need to clarify this pretty quickly.
Yeah.
This is-
Okay, but the board
I
is,
would honestly
information.
look to send this guy a revised offer letter very quickly.
well, we looked at this letter before it went out and we approved it in this format. Okay, so the board has to take responsibility for that as well. This letter wasn't a secret. We saw it. I don't know if it was I don't want to take the board's time to look back and see if it was in the first meeting in March or the second. I think the second meeting in March was confined to the BOS reorg. So I want to say our first meeting in March. We looked at the letter and approved it with a few changes. And perhaps Mr. Dietz was not there at the time.
I definitely,
let's-
I would have ripped this thing up.
What?
I would have went through this thing.
Yeah, but Jay, we saw this in January. We saw this previously. And again, maybe you missed 2 meetings. I don't know. I don't want to place a lot of blame. I don't understand the letter in the context of the law as I understand it. I don't know why you would send somebody who's an exempt employee 40 hours at whatever. I think this probably reflects a union mentality, a union setup that we had a long time ago, and then we went to non-union. I don't know.
It mentions non-union. Why would they care? This is to the candidate.
No, but I'm saying anytime you start talking about how many hours a week,
No, I get it, trust me.
yeah, we're not talking exempt. So somebody has a mindset, and maybe it's been there for a long time.
So what was the salary that was actually offered him outside the 48.36? What was the annual rate?
We approved $101,000 annually.
Okay.
Vanessa, would you confirm that that's Mr. Montia's understanding?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Why didn't we just put $101,000?
but Mark has told us that I asked him about this so he could be prepared for this discussion, and he told me an HR expert told them to put the smallest increment available into the hiring letter, hourly, weekly. I don't know,
Why
Mark,
didn't they just put daily?
because someone will think they're entitled to $101,000 if you terminate them in 3 months. As a
That's why
former
I didn't like
attorney,
that.
I would take that case. That
That's why-
doesn't-
like Barry said, Massachusetts is an at-will state. You can get let go for any reason at any time. You just have to have that one line that says Massachusetts, exactly like Barry said.
Okay, why don't
Okay.
we leave it at this?
Yeah,
If
I
Mr.
mean, we're not-
Rubenstein or Mr.
I'm
Dietz
fixing it right now.
has a model of a letter, please send it to me and to Vanessa, and we can work behind the scenes and we'll have a draft for the next meeting. I don't want to take up the whole day. A letter by committee is not going to get us, Jay, you want to be out of here at 2. So how does that sound? If everybody wants to take a look at this and send their comments to me and to Vanessa, and then we'll take it from there and we'll have something for the May meeting. Does that work?
Yeah, I have offer letter templates. I did one this morning. I'm doing another one at 3 o'clock. So
Great. Why don't you send us your draft, Jay, and we'll get that on the record, and that will be great. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the concerns, but I don't want to get waylaid just on this letter. And again, I want to make it clear, the board has seen this iteration of the letter many times. I understand that we evolve and grow, and we just figured out a couple weeks ago, we were not making the appropriate distinction between exempt and non-exempt. So it's evolving and it's improving, but we did see this letter before and we approved it. So everyone can have a hand in the solution. So thank you very much. All right, we're on to old business. So this is a follow-up, something I've had on the agenda for a while to do as soon as we finished up our SAP work. which is largely finished, except for the details and the handouts. So, and this is at the request of advisory committee. And they want us to look at employee benefits, and we agreed to look at employee benefits. And you have a memo in the file at page 7, sort of the timeline of this review. This started in December with a visit from Mr. Malinowski and concluded a month later with a written memorandum for a legal opinion and a conference call. And we would like to know where we're at. 3 months, I think that's 3 months down the road. If we could hear from Mr. Purple on where we are at with our legal request to Attorney Norris. You have the floor, Mr. Purple.
Thank you. I know that I reached out to, actually Ms. Hale reached out to Attorney Norris and received an email back this morning that the response back to the board should be to you by early next week.
Great. And will that be circulated to the board?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Great.
As soon as it's received, we can circulate that to the entire board.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Purple. And of course, you'll receive the opinion first. I don't think there's any sort of privilege issues, but you and Attorney Norris let us know if you don't want this discussed in open meeting.
Yeah, on the face of it, I don't think there'd be any issues, but yeah, I'll vet that with the attorney first.
I always like to do that with the attorney. Again, we're not discussing a particular employee. We're not taking action. It's not a legal proceeding. I don't even know that it's eligible, but I just want to raise that anytime we discuss something legal and an opinion of legal counsel in the open meeting.
Right.
So
The only trepidation I have, and the reason I hesitated, is simply because if you are making a change in the benefits, which does have potentially impacts beyond SAP and with any of the collective bargaining units who do reference, some of the same benefits that the non-union employees have, that may be a reason not to discuss it publicly. But again, I'll vet that with the attorney.
my feeling is if the union negotiations take something from a public document as part of their negotiation, that doesn't change the public nature. Everything we do at the SAP is done in open meeting because it's a bylaw. So this opinion bears on whether or not this board, so we're tasked with maintaining the bylaw. If we're going to change the bylaw in any way, I don't know that we are, starts with the legal opinion, then we have the policy discussion. Everything we do has to be done in an open meeting. Whether or not that is then brought into a collective bargaining doesn't make our work any less public. I would think. I don't know. Consigliere, what do you think? I don't want to
Not
put
my area of expertise, Mr.
I don't want to
Chairman.
put Barry on the spot, but every change we make to the SAP is public.
Yeah.
For better or for worse. So, all right, that's the way it is because it's a town bylaw. So thank you, Mr. Purple. And under 4B, I put on the agenda Board of Selectmen's job descriptions and the grading of the executive assistant position. So just a word on this. We were taking a look at the position of executive assistant. We did the grading analysis offline. We were going to have a meeting to discuss if there was something that was appropriate for the board to discuss for the SAP, and there was not. Ms. Hale, Mr. Dietz, and myself graded the position, and we found that there was some disparity between the proposed job description and the self-reported JAQ. So basically, we asked Mr. Purple to take this back to Ms. Esposito and do some more work on it. The grading analysis was inconclusive at this point because more work needed to be done. And basically, the way the grading works, you have to grade a position based on its job description. What are you going to be hiring this person to do, and what level should that be under the SAP? And the job description that had been proposed did not match the employee's self-reported level of work. And as Ms. Hale had noted, there were things that the current incumbent is doing that were reported on the JAQ that are not included in the current job description. So there's more work to be done at the Board of Selectmen's office on that. So we don't have anything for this board on that today, and you will see that again at a future meeting. Thanks, everybody. And thanks again to Jay for being available offline for the grading. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on section 4 on old business? All right, we move on to new business. We have the town clerk. He is with us today. Oh, that's a nice picture, Jim. Miss Hale, would you bring over the town clerk? Is he over with us? All right. All right, so the town clerk has 2 requests in the packet. The first one is at page 8. This is a request to set a salary for a new administrative assistant. And Mr. Hegarty, you have the floor. You're on mute, Jim, if you want to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I just had a brain freeze.
No problem.
One of those early mornings. Thank you very much for letting me come here. We had a terrific administrative assistant who left us when she was hired last year. She told us that she applied for a full-time position with the town of Hopkinton, where she lives, and they had a hiring freeze. And the town of Hopkinton lifted that freeze and contacted her, and she accepted the position. Very sorry to see her go. She did a phenomenal job for her. We advertised on Indeed, had over 150 applicants. We have a requirement that people take both a Microsoft Word proficiency test and an Excel proficiency test, and conducted 10 Zoom interviews with people initially. I brought 2 in for final interviews, and I'd like to hire Karen Garrity. Mrs. Garrity is a graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy and served for 6 years in the Navy Reserve and the Military Sealift Command. She has spent a number of years as an insurance underwriter on marine matters. She then took time off to raise her 3 children and has come back into the workforce and has worked as an aide at the school and as a administrator and administrative assistant for a physical therapy plant for a company for over 8 years. She did extremely well in the interviews, did extremely well in the tests, and one of the things that struck me is when I read these resumes of all the people that claim to have all kinds of degrees, levels of proficiency in Microsoft Word and Excel, the test they took told a different story. And I set up an account and took the test myself just to validate them. And one of the things that struck me about Mrs. Garrity is that she did so well in both tests, and when we talked about the position and what we expected her to do here, she confided in us that she wasn't confident in her Excel skills, so she took a review class when she saw that we had a requirement to take the test. And she scored extremely well. It's a pretty difficult class, so it's nice to be bringing somebody on board here that will find a solution to a problem and show some pretty good initiative. So I'm looking forward to bringing her in. I would like to have her start next Tuesday, assuming the background and the physical everything work okay. And I would like to pay her $24.60 an hour, which is the rate that we paid the prior occupant of the position. It'll be 19 and a half hours a week, no benefits. So because it's above the minimum, I need your approval for the rate, and I have money in the budget to cover it.
Thank you, Mr. Hegarty. When I saw that Ms. Chen was leaving, my only question is, I know you guys are getting ready for another very elaborate outdoor town meeting next month and an election. So I imagine you are very anxious to get someone up and running.
Yes, I'd bring her in this afternoon if we could, but
Okay.
Next Tuesday would realistically be a good starting point.
Okay. And is this hire going to get you where you need to go in May for May 22nd town meeting?
Yes, it will.
Okay, that's good to know. All right, comments or questions from the board on the request? Again, that's page 8. Anybody? All right. I don't see any hands or comments. All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve the request?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve the request to hire Ms. Garrity.
At an hourly rate of $24.60 per hour?
$24.60 per hour.
Second,
All right, second?
Second.
All right, we'll do this by roll call. Ms. Jazinski,
yes.
Mr. Dietz,
Yes,
Mr. Valentine, I'm just taking them as I see them on the screen. Mr. Rubenstein.
Yes.
All right, and the chair votes in the affirmative. All right,
Thank you.
it is unanimous. Good luck to you, Mr. Haggerty, and thank you for everything you are doing to bring us another outdoor town meeting. Not an easy task.
Well, let's all keep our fingers crossed for a nice day, not too hot and dry.
All right,
No rain.
thank you. And under 5A2, we have annual salary increase request from the town clerk for election workers and wardens. And that is at page 9 of the packet. Mr. Hegarty?
Straightforward, I had not requested that the 2.8% increase approved with the SAP for fiscal 21 be applied to these rates. And was asking if you replied now. What I will do in the future is I will come before you in July of each year to bring it on a, makes sense. We, honestly, I just didn't deliberately push this off. It slipped with all the things we had going on last fall, last summer.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Hegarty? I have one, Jim. If we could just take a minute and go down the agenda. We're going to have a matter on our agenda that I would like to get some input from you before you leave. I'll draw your attention to it. Under 5D, new policy, D2. So a year or two ago, we changed the SAP to say that some part-time workers and seasonal workers under schedules C and F might not need a performance evaluation to get a raise. Currently, at the time, the SAP said nobody could get a raise unless we saw performance evaluation. Yet we have certain workers like the camp counselors and Schedule F, like your election workers, that we don't see an evaluation for, and we give them a raise. So we changed the SAP and we said we'll come up with a policy. We haven't. I'd like the board to address that this spring. And if you could just put your mind to it, I don't need an answer now. I'm going to ask the board to, I think we should reach out to the departments that have these employees and try to find a dividing line. Certain part-time employees should be reviewed, but I don't know that we need to be reviewing, for example, your election workers and wardens. So if you could give some thought to what you think, the draft policy is in our packet. It's at the back of the packet. I went to draft a policy and realized I didn't have the input I needed. It's Bates, page 27. And really what I'm looking for from you, and I will reach out to the library, is what's the dividing line? You've got part-time employees that should have a review and probably election workers that don't need one. How many hours a week? How many hours a year? How would you recommend that we measure who gets a review and who doesn't? So just something to think about. Sure. While you're here. It's a little further down our agenda. I don't want to keep you to that discussion. So
happy to.
In the meantime, there is a request for increase for the election workers and wardens. I didn't see any hands up, any comments from the board.
I have one. I am going to recuse myself from this vote as I am a poll worker. Warden.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Jasinski. Much appreciated. All right, the chair will make a motion to approve a 2.8% increase for FY21 for the town clerk's election workers and wardens as set forth in page 9 of the packet for inspector tellers to from a current rate of $11.96 an hour to a new rate of $12.29, and wardens and deputy wardens from a current rate of $12.62 an hour to $12.97. Do I have a second for Mr. Dietz or Mr. Rubenstein?
Second.
All right, this will be a roll call vote. Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
And the chair votes in the affirmative. So that is 3-0 with 1 abstain. You have your increase, Mr. Haggerty. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, and get back to me on that other matter when you have a minute.
Will do. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, everyone. We are on 5B, town meeting. So the SAP revisions have been submitted to Ms. Esposito, and she typed them up yesterday. She did a terrific job as always, and I've just received the final versions. I hadn't proofread them, but I'm sure they will be fine. So the only remaining items for this board for SAP, as far as I'm concerned, unless someone has something else, is the question of how would you, I presume you want me to present the SAP as I have done. I think this will be my 4th year. If anyone else would like to represent the board at town meeting, it does not have to be the chair. Do I see a hand up? Somebody want the job? Okay. I guess I'm doing it. And the last year, I did not do a presentation. I did a presentation my first year in 2018 to explain where we were going with the SAP. Maybe the second year, not last year. I would merely get up, move the question, say a few words about who we are and what we do, and then answer questions. I don't personally feel the need for a presentation. And the less time I spend talking is more time town meeting can focus on something controversial or one of the many boards that feels they really need to make a presentation. So I would cede my 5 to 7 minutes to some other board. And I just wanted to hear from the members if you would like to hear a presentation from me at town meeting.
I don't think it's
See the
necessary.
shaking of heads.
I don't
Okay.
think it's necessary.
Thank you, Ms. Jasinski. All right. And then just the rundown on the handouts. So what will appear in the warrant will be our revisions with no track changes showing. It will be track changes fully accepted. So what is in the warrant, if approved by town meeting, will be the new SAP. All the changes included, but not shown. And then we will have a separate handout showing full track changes for those who are interested to see what came out, what went in. And then we will have a second handout, and that will be substantially in the form of the draft that is in your packet at page 10. And this is something I think I've done all of this will be the 4th year. For those who don't want to slog through the bylaw, it's just a section by section description of what we've changed. You've seen this before. So the one that's in the packet, I actually came up with for the roadshow last week for the Board of Selectmen and Advisory. And I stamped it draft because you folks hadn't actually seen it. And I usually add something on the front page like approved, either the date that we finished the changes or the date, something about a date on there that's not on there. And I put this in the packet. I don't think it actually needs approval of the board because it's just a description of the work that we did together throughout the year. However, given that I'm describing the work we did, it's conceivable somebody on the board could disagree with how I've characterized something or wants me to state it a little differently. So you've got time. If anybody reviews this, does anybody have questions or comments on the summary? So it's pages 10 to 14. Anything jump out at you? All right. So what I would do if it agrees with the board, if you want to take a little more time to look at this, I know you didn't get your packets until about 48 hours ago on Monday morning. Take a look. If you think anything should be changed, send me a note. I can always put it in the packet for May 12th, or I can just finish it up myself and put a stamp on it. So.
Well, has everybody reviewed it already?
I don't know. Did you all have a chance to review it already? Excuse me.
I read it, so I already looked at it.
Everybody good? Anybody want more time with it?
I can figure it out pretty quick. I didn't look at it, but I'm good.
All right. Yeah, it's not usually anything that's real controversial. It just summarizes for the folks at town meeting what we did and why we did it. It's just another way of presenting the data that's in the SAP itself. All right. So it's the sense of the board that I have authority to put this in final. All right, great. Thank you. I think that's anything I have for town meeting. Anybody else have any comments or questions about town meeting? Okay, I hope to see you all there. C, performance evaluation FY22. So I put this on the agenda. We need to address how we're going to do this. And I have already received an email from a few department heads saying, hey, are you going to change the performance evaluation tool? Well, when are we going to get going? How's this going to work? So I wanted to, this is an important thing to address today. Ms. Hale, do we have any employees in the waiting room?
No.
Okay, thank you. I invited those who had questions to come and join the conversation. And on a related matter, the performance evaluation tool itself, I've put it in the packet. It is at page 15 through, see the Bates number drop. No, there it is. Sorry. Pages 15 to 21 is the performance evaluation tool. I know we've talked about revising it since it was rolled out in November of 2019. So I summarized in a memo that's in the packet of pages 22 to 25, pages 22 to 25, kind of the timeline on this. And then I collected up all the revisions that anyone had talked about, and it's in not a particular order. And that's on page 25. These are things that we either talked about in a meeting and tabled to springtime till after the SAP, or things I picked up in meetings with employees that I had under the liaison program, or anything anyone said to me. So is the board, I'll turn it over to board members to discuss how you'd like to handle. Let's talk about the performance tool first, because I'd like to get that, if we're going to make changes, get that out to the managers as soon as possible. So I'll open it up to board comments on any amendments or revisions to the tool. And of course, to our administrators who work with the tool, Mr. Purple, Ms. Hale, if you've received feedback from employees, maybe beyond or in addition to what's on page 25. So I'll open up the discussion.
So you don't have these changes on this new form here?
No, correct, Doria, Ms. Jasinski. Yes, the form that is in the packet is the final form that Ms. Esposito made the changes on. It's the form from last November, was November 2019. I'm sorry, it's been over a year. November 2019. And then what's in my memo is kind of the history of what we talked about, and then a list of revisions that people had suggested over the last 18 months.
But these are not on this review sheet right now.
Haven't made any of them. They are just suggested revisions.
Okay.
I always figure it makes it easier for the board if I go back and I spent the weekend searching through all my notes and all the minutes of our meetings since we approved the form.
Okay, one thing I'd like to see on this front page of the review, the performance review, is the signature of the manager and the employee.
Okay.
I also think that each of the pages with documentation of their performance, I think the employee should be initialing every one of those pages in this report to show that they've actually seen it and they agree with, like, they must be going through this with their managers. I think the employee should be initialing that they saw that page of this review.
Well, they sign it on the back.
I understand, but any kind of a legal document that you have, you always initial every page when you go through things. When I did these, when I was a manager, I would have my employees sign an initial. They signed the page, the front and the back, and they would initial every page that they reviewed with me to show that we reviewed that information. Just a suggestion. That's what I think. That's what I would suggest we add to this.
Thank you. Did you have any, I know, Ms. Jasinski, you were one of the proponents, maybe the chief proponent of revising this. And I would direct your attention on page 25. There was an issue about what the board would see and not see in terms of previous evaluations. We said we needed evaluations back and forth. Some people were dissatisfied with what we saw. We didn't see enough. That was on us. So this is our chance to make sure that we say what we want to see. So one thing I discussed with Ms. Hale, you may recall last year, Mr. Laflamme set up a secure file on the town OneDrive. We all received a link, and the evaluations, as Vanessa received them, she uploaded them to those files. Those files are still there. I tried the link this morning. The link has been disconnected, but I spoke with Vanessa. I don't see any reason why the link could not be reinvigorated. If she doesn't have the know-how to do it, somebody at town hall can do it, or the new IT director can do it in 10 days when they start, or, shortly after they start. We could ask them. And Vanessa has that link. It's just disabled. It probably timed out. The documents are there from last year. I don't think anybody would need to attach anything since they live on the drive. My recommendation would be to reactivate the link and tell the department heads to just send them in the way they did last year, and Vanessa will put them in the files. And then folks like Jay, who see what they want to see in one set, or Dorian may want to look through everything again. Does that make sense to everybody? Why wouldn't that work since the documents are already there? Does that make sense to everybody? Right? They're there and we can just add to them, and then people can look at what they want to look at. Vanessa, I don't know your OneDrive. Does that make sense? Would that work? Okay.
It does.
She's shaking her head. Okay. So, Dorian, did you have any other changes other than initialing and the signature of the reviewer on the front?
It says the current SAP grade in the upper right. It says select full-time. There's nothing else to select. So I'm not sure if we're missing part-time on that for some reason, or if these are just for full-time and we.
I believe that.
It's a
Sorry.
fillable form, and that's what it was on. That's the setting it was on when I printed it out. But this is an interactive document. So there's
it's
a
just
menu.
not there, but there is part-time that's supposed to be there. Okay.
Yeah, that thing that says select and full-time looks differently if you look at the PDF.
Okay.
Okay.
And then,
hang on one second. I think Vanessa has her hand up. Ms. Hale.
It's a pop-up menu, so you can select full-time, part-time, or when it comes to grades, you can select the appropriate number.
okay. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Okay.
And then I had one other question. So we were assigned different departments to talk to them about this review process, the evaluation form, what they thought. I was negligent in calling Mr. Purple. He's the only one I didn't speak to. I figured he saw this enough, so he didn't want to talk to me, but that was my assumption. A lot of feedback is with the comments that are required for each section. We have 5 choices there. The departments are asking that we eliminate 1, maybe 2 of those selections if they kind of overlap a little bit. So I don't know if you really want to get into a discussion today about that, but I was wondering if we could eliminate at least 1 of those 5 choices and try to combine them.
Can you give us a specific?
So like you have exceptional and above expectations. Is there a way to combine that and just make that 1 choice? Or does not meet expectations or unsatisfactory? Is there a way to combine them to just is not fulfilling their job requirements? Or is there a way to make this 1 less selection? It's just, it was a big deal. That was one of the biggest comments that I received was it's just too many choices and some of them really overlap. So could we cut out 1 and kind of combine it? Make them 4 choices, or they'd like only 3 choices actually, but baby steps. Just throwing it out there for discussion. Those were some of my comments on this evaluation form. So I'm just coming back to the board with it. Because we never actually brought that back into a meeting, so.
Thank you for the feedback from the departments with which you had these discussions. Referencing my timeline history in the packet at page 22, 23, and 24, I think we can all agree that we discussed these categories. Should I use the word ad nauseum?
I was just going to say that.
This went on for a long time. We went back and forth. I'm sorry that Mr. Nixon is not available today. He had very strong feelings about the wording. As I recall, Ms. Jasinski, you had proposed an alternative form. We had 2 meetings with Mr. Purple to collaborate and come up with a form between your 2 and then take it back to the board. I know all the members of the board had extensive comments. I would be loath to do that, and not because I don't want to make people happy, but the second point is, and I think we all remember this, when we sat down to look at these reviews in the summer and fall of 2020, there was a disconnect between the managers and reviewers and this board. Best exemplified by a comment that a board member made. We wanted to trust the discretion of the managers to tell us the bad and the good, the real story, and that didn't happen. We all on this board commented that we thought the reviews painted a picture that really could not naturally exist in nature. So putting those 2 things together, if we take out this 5 scale that we all came up with and agreed on and dragged Mr. Purple along with us through many months of negotiation, he still has some tread marks, probably. Not the worst process he ever went through in his time as town manager, but a lengthy, town administrator. I would be loath to throw that over simply because I don't think we've reached the place yet. This year will be a test of whether or not we've made inroads through our collaboration, through the liaison program, through our one-on-one discussions. If we've been able to impart to the managers that we're looking for serious reviews with nuance, and that exceptional doesn't mean above average. Exceptional means truly exceptional. I know everybody's mom told them they were exceptional, but it was a lie. I hate to tell you. Or people are exceptional in different ways, but not everyone as an employee is exceptional. Many more people may be above average. There were reasons behind each one of these categories that we chose. So I don't know.
That was just my feedback, so I'm bringing
Gotcha.
it to the
Well,
board
how do you
because
feel
that was
about
my
it?
job.
How do
Whether
you
I
feel
agree
about
with
it?
them or not, that wasn't my point. My point was this was the concern. And this was part of the feedback that I had when I made my phone calls. So
Well, how do you feel about it?
I was extremely disappointed with the reviews. I was embarrassed with the reviews. I felt that there was no way it could be the way they came out.
I'm sorry.
I just thought they were awful. And so to me, the more selections they have, the better. I understand when you're reviewing a lot of people and there's a lot of choices, it makes it a little bit tougher. Personally, I like what we were offering, but out of respect for my departments, I was going to bring their feelings forward, and that's what I'm doing. So whether I agree or disagree with them, that wasn't what I was assigned to do. I was assigned to bring their perspective forward, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Thank you, but I'm asking you, I understand you expressed your feelings, as did we all, on the record last year. I'm asking you, in light of the feedback that you got, do you have a changed position, or would you like to stick with the same 5?
I think we should stick with this for one more year with a few little, manager signatures, small changes. I think we should give it one more year and then go back to our departments and get their feedback again and see what happens.
Okay.
I think to just give it a one-shot deal and make more changes, serious changes, would be a mistake on our part.
All right.
That's my opinion, but
Thank you, Ms. Jasinski.
I'm not doing the review, so.
Okay. Anybody else?
One of the things that I heard from people I talked to is they would like to see an employee self-evaluation tool, either as part of the evaluation form or as a separate document that the employee would have to complete and give to the manager prior to the completion of the personal evaluation of the employee. And I think that makes sense to create a record of what the employee thinks of the job that he or she is doing, whether it should be part of this form or a separate document. that would be up for discussion, but I think makes sense to have some kind of tool like that. And obviously, we did have one in the past that some managers used, but not everyone, at least that we saw.
Thank you. There is a self-evaluation form. I recall, I think the library submitted several of them. Vanessa, is that something that was included in the predecessor form, or is that a separate form?
It was never included as part of the performance evaluation tool. It was a separate document.
Okay, so if the board wanted to bring that back, you have such a form?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess this discussion will bleed a little bit into timing. If we're gonna change the tool, when do we have a final tool to the reviewers? Because what is the calendar for when we're gonna do the reviews? And I guess a threshold, because we have more or less time to fix this form and change it if, depending on when we're gonna ask the reviews to be in, obviously. So my threshold question to the board is, do you want these reviews to cover the full fiscal year till June 30th and then give managers X amount of time to get them in July? Is that what we're doing?
I thought we wanted the reviews by the middle of June so we could review them before the deadline.
Right.
I thought that's what we had agreed on. We had agreed that they had to be into us a few weeks before. I believe it was mid-June, maybe it was early June, but my recollection is we wanted all reviews to this board by mid-June so we could review them before July 1st.
We talked about that, Dorianne. You are correct, but we never laid out anything or made any announcements. And it occurs to me that if you're going to review somebody for June for the full year, we can do as we did last year. The raise will be effective July 1st when it is granted, but it could be discussed in August or September, which is what we did last year, right?
Right, but we changed it last year to be a July 1st. I mean, the review should be done prior to that July 1st, so that when the reviews are done and agreed upon before the July 1st date. I mean, that should be done prior to that. We
But
shouldn't be
what-
doing reviews in August and September when
No.
raise.
I'm asking a threshold question. What is the period we are asking the reviewers to review?
We had talked about, and I thought we had agreed on, we would have the reviews done, handed to us. I believe it was like mid-June. Jay, do you remember?
I'm sorry, I must not be asking the question the right way. We talked about this in passing. This is the discussion that we're going to have today and start making decisions. Offhand, we said, if we're going to give raises July 1st, we need the reviews before July 1st. But we didn't really actually say, and one of my suggestions is these reviews need to say what period is being reviewed. If we are asking managers to review a period up to and including June 30th, 2021, then we're not going to have the reviews in June. What is the period covered by this review? Let me start with the question. What was the period covered by the last review we saw? Vanessa, I don't have access to the documents because my link was disabled. Do you recall if these reviews carried through, I believe, through June 30th, 2020?
I think so. I can check on that, but
Okay.
just give me a minute.
So then we're going to ask managers to review. I've got two managers here. Got Mr. Ballantyne and Mr. Purple. Do you recall if you reviewed your employees for us through June 30th, 2020? Does that ring a bell?
Pretty sure that was accurate.
And your understanding would be that this current review is going to be for the period July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021. And then everyone's eligible for a raise with a satisfactory review on July 1st. But there's the lag time because we can't give them a raise on July 1st if we haven't seen the review. So the review, like last year, will be made retroactive. Otherwise, we're going to be changing the review to be July 1st, 2020 to May 15th. And then you're going to get it into us in June. I'm saying, how do we want to do it? We thought all the issues with synchronization would be resolved in year one, but actually we resolved them in year two. Mr. Rubenstein, you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember what we did in terms of the timing. So we said anyone who had been, remember we had cutoff dates, and I think it was April 1st on that you didn't have to do, someone was hired after April 1st, you didn't have to do a review, but people who had been hired before December 31st, 2000, I'm getting my years confused, but 19, those people had to get a new review. So I don't know. Yeah, so I guess those people were getting a new review, which was effectively through June 30th, 2020. You're correct, except for that group that was after April 1st.
And then they just needed a cover sheet.
Right.
But I thought the intent was to bring everybody to have, although some employee, you're right, Barry, we had one group and another group. They were separate depending on when they'd received their last full review, when their anniversary date was. But the intent was to have paperwork, 2 different sets of paperwork, to bring everybody up. And the folks that had had a full review within X months, we just needed a cover sheet to make sure they hadn't suddenly turned into a different person in the last 3 months of the year. And there were cover sheets that were submitted by these employees. I believe the intent was to bring everybody up to June 30th of 2020, making them eligible for a raise on July 1st. But again, there was a lag time for paperwork. Whenever we approved the raises, maybe it was August, they were retro to July 1st. So we either need to make these reviews, 10-month reviews this year or every year. In year 3, there'll be 12-month reviews, but we'll say, okay, the reviews through May and then get them to us in June. Or we say they are reviews, like I said, for July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021, and they're eligible for a raise, and we'll make it retro after we have our review meeting. Is that clear? Sorry. Is that clear to folks? I'd like to hear from my managers. Is that a problem? Would you rather do the reviews and get them to us in July and hear the raises in August and make them retro? Or do you want to make the review year like May 1st to May 1st? So we can do it in June and they can have the raise in their paycheck July 1.
Well, so from my perspective, I really don't care. It doesn't matter. I think once you set the path, we'll follow that path. I know that, getting everybody to the July 1st date, was a little bit dicey. And now that we've done that, I think just setting it how you want to do it moving forward. Brian can answer the question about doing retro and everything in that, but I think that payroll needs to do them all at once. So as long as they're still happening all at once, I'm not sure that there's a big issue, whether it's done July 1 or whether it's done with, with a little bit of retro, but Brian can tell me I'm wrong.
Okay. And I don't want to put it, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, I really hadn't thought about adjusting the time period much, but it may not be a bad idea. I'm only thinking because you don't want the June 30th reviews to bleed too far into the fiscal year, preferably, and with its summertime in July, it just gets it's easy to talk about in April, doing a lot of work in July and August, but half the people are gone. So it would be a little easier to do it on an adjusted schedule, but we can make it work no matter what, but it's just, I think it would be a little more smooth if we did actually do it a little different.
So the review period would be July 1st, 2020 to, I'll propose May 1st, 2021. They get the reviews into us. We give them 3 or 4 weeks. We have the reviews in June, and we, as Dorian has suggested, we would do them either in one meeting or a series of meetings, probably one meeting on a consent agenda in June, and then you're good to go in July.
I kind of like it, but it's up
So
to the board,
and then the
but-
review period next year would be a 12-month cycle
Correct.
from May 1st to May 1st. All right.
Correct.
So this would be a 10-month.
I just don't think we should set up anything where the employees have to wait for retroactive pay because of our scheduling, whatever. So we have to fix it. They should be getting their raise on July 1st. So whatever we have to do to make that work, that's what we should be doing. They
All
should
right.
not have to wait 2 more months or 3 months to get retroactive pay. I just don't feel that's the correct way to handle it.
Thank you, Ms. Jasinski. The only issue I have with that is I also heard for the last 18 months, we have to change the form. We have to change the form. There are problems with the form. We have to change the form. If we're going to change the form and give it to reviewers to start reviews on May 1st, we got to change the form now. We can't wait till the May meeting. You have to decide what you don't like about the form and approve all the changes today. Normally, I would say let's just have a special meeting. But I don't know that I will be available before May 12th. Based on my reaction to my first vaccine, I have to plan some downtime. I'm still recovering from my first vaccine on April 5th. So I can only anticipate, nobody knows for sure. I have my second shot on April 27th. I'm not going to be good to have a meeting in between.
We can commute. I got my shot on the 27th.
Oh, well, I hope you do a lot better
Commiserate.
than I did, Jay. Just not to get into it. I'm just saying I can't marshal a meeting. I hope to be available on May 12th, but I can't imagine me being available like a week sooner. The option is to have a meeting next week to do the performance evaluation form, if you'd like to do that.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling would be unless we've heard an uproar that the form is so horrible, which I don't think we've heard, I'd be inclined to just go with it for another year and give ourselves more time to look at it and decide if we want to make changes for the following year.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rubenstein. What about the comments that have been, do we want to just make some of these little changes to the cover page? Can we look at page 25 for a minute? The first thing is I would like to change the title to Town of Southborough Salary Administration Plan Performance Appraisal. It's not, strictly speaking, the non-union. We have contract managers. This was not known to me at the time. I think we all just accept this is the title it was given when Mr. Purple brought it forward. Since that time, I have learned that he does not use this performance appraisal with the managers who have private individual contracts. So I think the title technically should just be Town of Southborough Salary Administration Plan Performance Appraisal. Does
I
that
agree.
work for everybody?
I agree.
Mr. Purple, could we ask you to make that change?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Just, I think it's a little confusing where it says non-union. Do we want votes on this? Or do we just want,
Why don't we just do one big vote at the end?
Yeah.
okay, great. All right, so going down where it says date, I would like that to say date of review because there are other dates on this form. I just find it confusing. All right, people are nodding their heads. We can roll that into the motion. All right. We had previously discussed adding the name of the reviewer to the cover page. It does not appear here. People shaking their heads. Is that agreeable?
Yep.
Yep.
And Dorian's suggestion that we have signatures on the front page. Is that what you want, Dorian?
Yes, please.
Signatures of employee and reviewer on the front page and the last page. And if we do go to a place where we're just seeing cover sheets, that would be helpful. So add signature, reviewer, and employee to the cover page. All right. The next thing I have is I'd like to see us delete the field for anniversary date. We're recommending that that come out of the SAP, and we call it start date now. Everybody agree that the form should say start date instead of anniversary date?
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. And then we had a field for period reviewed before, and that didn't make it in the transition to the new form. I think it would be great to clarify on this form, add a field on the cover page that says period reviewed, so everybody knows what period the review is for. All right. And then I think I've answered my question about whether or not we need last year's review, because those will be available in the OneDrive file. So we can cross that off the list. All right. The next thing we have discussed was to add a field for a public body, and by public body, I mean a board, a committee, or a commission, to have their input on a review if they are not the principal reviewer. So for example, one example comes to mind, the Senior Center, Council on Aging. Some years, the director is reviewed by Mr. Purple, because that department is in the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. But some years, she's been reviewed by her Council on Aging. She said it goes back. Has a long history here, Miss LaFrancois. Some years it's a town administrator, some years it's her board. There are
Well,
other
actually,
employees.
I'm sorry, Betsy, she's appointed by the Council on Aging, so they should be the ones doing the review.
But one year you did it. And since
Because
I've
they
been on the
didn't-
board,
right, because they
What?
didn't want to, so.
it bounces back.
Look, that's just it. If they're gonna have the appointment authority, then you need to take it, you need to do the review as well, so.
If you could communicate that to her and her counsel, that'd be great, or we could do that together. My understanding from her is it would just never clarify. That was her perception. So let's use another example. We may have somebody who report, again, if we had a town org chart, I could put the org chart up on the screen and we could look at it. We could say, okay, we have some cases of joint jurisdiction here. Let's give the example of personnel board close to home. Mr. Purple does Ms. Hale's evaluation, yet she spends a significant amount of her day on personnel matters. She supports and is the, I think you call it, administrative liaison to the personnel board. We'd like to have some input into her review. So where would that field be here? So in the case of the board of the senior center, if they do her review, then obviously their input is the entire review. But if you have someone who is reviewed by an employee of the town, Mr. Purple, a department head, yet they work with a board or commission that has a significant relationship with them, adding that back in. And that's something Mr. Purple said he was amenable to do. So what form would that take? And maybe that goes beyond, and we need to consider that for another day. Maybe that goes beyond just a little technical change. So think about that for a minute. The next thing was on page 6. Under the SMART goals, we talked about revising that. And this is in the packet at page 20. Under next year, one of the comments from one of my departments was it says target date for completion of the goal and proposed date. And nobody could tell me what the difference was. So we said we should take out one of those. You have a proposed goal. I think, Mr. Purple, you said you didn't know what the difference was. That was just something that was in this form and nobody really knew a justification for it. So am I correct? Am I remembering correctly?
Yes.
Do we want to take out one or the other? As a manager, what matters to you in terms of future goals?
I would say target date.
Okay.
Probably better, and because yes, when at the time you're doing the review, the target date and the proposed date oftentimes, can be the same thing. So it's a little bit redundant. So I keep target date.
Okay, so we take out the column on page 6 that says proposed date of completion for the next year's goals. Okay. And Mr. Dietz, this one is for you on page 21, and I think we're all set. This is page 7 of the form. You were the one who brought forth some time ago the idea that professional development, the goals should be included in the form. It has been included. I just wanted to make sure, as I said in my memo, are your concerns about professional development goals adequately addressed in the current form?
Yeah, I think they're fine.
Okay. All right. So with the exception of where we're going to add the public body, I think everybody agreed we'll change the title. Date will be changed to date of review. We'll add the name of reviewer to the cover page. We'll add a signature for the reviewer and the employee on the cover page. We will delete anniversary date, substitute start date. We'll add a field for period reviewed. We will delete the proposed date on page 6 for next year's goals. So those are just a few things that I think can be pretty quickly changed. And yes, Ms. Hale.
Just one clarifying question on the cover sheet. When you say start date, I just wanted to ask the board, Were you thinking of start date in current position or start date as a town employee? There are several employees that have moved from one department to another. So that's one thing I wanted to double check.
Well, what's the relevant date for their review?
I think the date that they are in their current position. I'm going to ask Brian to weigh in too.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
All
okay.
right, so do you want to call it start date, parens, current position, and parens?
That would be helpful. Yes, thank you.
Why don't we do that? Thanks for the suggestion. Sounds good. All right. So the chair's going to make a motion that we make the changes that I have just noted in the record on Bates, page 25. Under cover page, the things that I read, and then the page 6 SMART goals. We're going to make a change to the proposed date. I think is everybody clear on what the list is of what we're doing? I just read them. The only thing we haven't decided is what we're going to do for the public body input. And I think we're going to discuss that at a future time. So are we good to ask? I don't know if do you want to take a vote on those changes? Or do we just,
You want to vote to approve it? You just mentioned them all, so.
Yeah, all right. Motion to make the changes that I just read, and I'll set them again, and they'll be in the recording. Is everybody clear on the changes? You want me to read them again?
No, clear. Second the
Second for
motion.
the motion?
Second.
All right. Ms. Jasinski?
Yes.
Mr. Dietz?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes.
And the chair votes in the affirmative. Mark, can I ask, do you want me to transmit these changes to Lori based on this meeting? I can listen to the recording and make sure I write them all out, or did you write them down? Do you want to give it to her?
If you want to transmit those and just copy me on it, that would be great. Just one clarification. So
Yeah.
did you or did you not add a comment field for public body?
No, because I think we need to discuss where that would go. That's the next discussion. We took care of everything for the cover page, although what would I call technical things, the easy things. And now we're going to discuss field for public comment. Because I don't think we've really ever talked about how the boards would do the reviews. The only example I have, I think, Mr. Purple, is the Board of Selectmen doing your review. So I think maybe this is something that the board needs to take up. We have a few other things we have to decide. So I'm going to table that to another time. So I will follow up this week with an email to you and Lori with the changes to be made. All right. When those changes are made, does the board want to authorize me? We can do it one of two ways. We can have a meeting next week. I know that Ms. Esposito is she did the typing on this. I know, is this something Ms. Hale can take over? I know you folks are very busy, Ms. Esposito in particular, getting the warrant ready. I hesitate to ask you to make any changes. Ms. Hale, are you available to undertake to make the changes?
It's fine. Yeah, because they're all just changes in the titles and.
You have access to the fillable
Yes.
form?
Yeah.
Great. I don't know how this ended up on Lori's desk in the first place, but I know she's doing the warrant. Do you folks want to meet next week to put your stamp on it, or do you want to authorize me to approve it with those changes so we can get it out to the department heads?
Authorize you to approve it.
Okay. All right. I don't need a motion. If you're telling me that you don't want to have a meeting, it's on the record. Mr. Dietz, is that okay with you with the technical changes we've made?
Yep.
Okay. And then I will roll it out. So that leads me to the process and the calendar. How do we want to roll this out? We're going to make some cosmetic changes on it. The department heads who contacted me already, I told them if you want to get going on your reviews, the form is not going to substantially change. Get going in the form that it's in, and as soon as we make changes, we'll let you know. So we will be doing that before April 27th when I get my second shot. Everything's going to be done before April 27th. So now, do we want to make the period of the reviews? Does May 1st work for everybody? Do we like that?
May 1st is a Saturday. Does that matter?
I'm just saying to give the,
I'm just saying. Doesn't
yeah,
matter.
what do we want the period to be? How long do you want to give the reviewers and when do you want to receive them? We just need to give them a timeline.
May 1st to April 30th? Is that what you want to do?
Doesn't matter.
I'm sorry, Dorian, I don't,
May 1st to April 30th? Is that
Okay.
Is that your,
well, they've already, okay, so. Yeah, you want to do that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, works.
All right. So well, they've already reviewed the employees to June 30th, 2020. All the employees have been reviewed technically. So it's July 1st, 2020 to April 30th,
yes,
2021.
July 1st, right? Because
Okay.
we're trying to synchronize our
Yeah.
synchronization.
Okay. My understanding, and Vanessa's going to confirm this when she looks at the reviews, but my understanding would be that these employees have all been reviewed up to June 30th, 2020. So the current review is going to be July 1st, 2021 through April 30th, 2021.
July 1st, 2020.
This review for year 2 of synchronization is going to be July 1st, 2020 to April 30th, 2021. So when we get this revised form and it says period for all but new employees, for all employees who have been here since July of last year, the review period will be July 1, 2020 to April 30th, 2021. And then on May 1st, 2021, the managers will pick up their pens and May will be review month. And we'll give them a month to do the reviews. How's that sound?
Works.
All right. If they want to take less time. And then we will ask them, as they did for last year, to deposit them on or before May 31st in the OneDrive. How's
So,
that sound?
So Betsy, that means the following year, the reviews will start, the period review would be May 1st, 2021 to April 30th of 2022. Now you'll start getting your full year on the second run, correct?
Yes, year 3.
Okay, just clarifying. Thank you.
How's that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. And as usual, I'll go to write this out. I'll realize I didn't catch something, and then I'll call Jay and Barry and they'll figure it out for me. And probably Brian too. All right. So you're going to authorize me to send an email to all the department heads with SAP employees and all the boards and committees and commissions who have SAP employees and outline this for them, right? Do you want to have a meeting to look at that email next week? No. Okay. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think we've missed anything. It all makes sense to me. And is there anything else on performance reviews? So Vanessa, you think we'll be able to, and then the board can get access to the link. So the new IT guy starts on the 20th. Reviews will be coming in. That'll give them a month to get us access. That sounds pretty
Certainly, that's fine.
Okay, so should we go ahead and calendar the June meeting to review them?
The May meeting?
The June meeting when we will do the
When are we meeting in May?
May 12th,
Okay.
Wednesday, May 12th. Is that still good for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so the second Wednesday in June would be June 9th. And that would give us time to do the reviews. And if there were any issues, we could meet again in June to address them. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, we will meet on June 9th, 2021. The other question that came up from department heads is, are we going to keep this with consent agenda? I see no reason why we wouldn't do them on consent agenda unless we receive something that's problematic, in which case as you review them, you would notify me that there's something problematic, or if I see something problematic, and then at that point I would talk to the reviewer and say, this isn't ready for consent.
Okay.
All right, or they can all be consented and any member of the board can pull something off consent. But it would be by consent, unless people want to get back into discussing them individually. I don't know why the department had asked me that question. I don't think we've ever talked about taking them off consent now that they're on. Okay, great. Any other comments about the performance evaluation? And of course, we'll continue the discussion about what to do with it in May if people want to add, but I would like to get people, I appreciate Barry's suggestion that we get moving with it. All right. We have a couple, anybody have anything else on the performance evaluation form or the rollout? Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. All right. And the last order of business is new policies. I threw a couple of things into the folder. This is the year of the written policy. So the first one is at page 26. You may recall at our last meeting, or maybe the meeting before, I can't remember, we were discussing the eligibility of the new hire for a raise. And we decided that if folks are here more than 6 months, they would be eligible for consideration of a raise. Because if we don't do that, as Barry pointed out, some folks may be here 22 or 23 months, and that's not very attractive to a candidate. So I started to draft a proposal that's in your packet at page 26 to put into writing the discussion that we had. And the first thing that I came up with is basically we're saying all new employees are eligible for a salary review on July 1st of the year following their start date. Because if they're hired after January 1st, they're not getting a raise that July. They have to wait till the next July. But if they're hired before January 1st, then they're eligible next July 1st. And you can see what I put in the
When
packet.
does the fiscal year end?
June 30th?
So that's a long way away. Usually it's 90 days from the regular sectors. So on average, let's say that the fiscal year ends January 1st, you get a prorated portion of your benefits or of your bonus up until September 31st. Or September 30th. Anything after September 30th, you don't receive a bonus.
I think you may have been the meeting that you missed.
6 months is a long time to tell somebody that because they missed 6 months that they don't get their bonus. That's a long way away.
Okay, so the just for backup, the context of this conversation was the hiring letter for the IT manager. Ms. Hale had it in the packet and she needed our guidance as to whether or not this person who is being hired to start April 20th would be eligible for a review July 1st. And the consensus of this board was no, that's too soon. Mr. Purple said, there might be enough there to review the person. I really would have to think about that. And the board thought about it and said no. And then we had a discussion, and I'm sorry you were not present. And what evolved was what is in this policy. So my question is, when I look at section 7 of the SAP, section 7 says all employees who are eligible for a review are eligible for a raise when they've been here a year. And that was what I had proposed. So the threshold question is, before we even get to Jay's matter, what we discussed before, does it conflict with what's in the SAP? I don't have a problem if we need to revise the SAP. I'm not suggesting we're going to put this in for this year. But every time we come up, it seems like every time we come up with something, and then the devil's in the details, I go to put it in writing and I say, oh, what section does this fall under? I want to reference the section. And then I read the section. And when I open my current SAP, every employee that is in continuous full-time or part-time service of the town shall be eligible annually for consideration of a salary increase. So I have no problem if you want to qualify this and say this is for employees who've already been an employee of the town for at least a year. For new hires, this is what we're going to do. But I just wanted to draw your attention that we're making a policy that affects section 7, and section 7 is already in the SAP.
Betsy, I think number 2 doesn't read very well. I think you need to clarify after 1 year, 1 full year of employment, instead of saying review on July 1st of the year following. I think you need to simplify that, say after a full year of employment.
But that's not what we decided, Dorian. What we decided is number 1. I put it in there as a threshold, and then the rest is an example of how it works. And Jay is now questioning that.
Okay,
So thank you for
Sorry.
your comment.
sorry,
We
I
decided
misread. Okay,
the board-
I missed, yeah, I was
Board
just.
didn't want to wait a year. Board said 6 months.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. I just read number 2 by itself. My
Yeah.
mistake.
No problem. I don't think there's a problem with what I wrote. I think what I wrote codifies what the board discussed. The question is, are we sticking with what we discussed? And of course, I'm always open to suggestions on how I can state the board's intent more clearly if I have not done so. That's not usually my issue. Once the board decides where it wants to go, I usually can put it in writing. The question is this where we want to go? And does it conflict with section 7? Because I just want to stay consistent with the SAP. And if we're doing something that we're going to change the SAP, that's okay too.
I think, honestly, I think waiting 6 months to give somebody their merit increase is wrong. I think it should be 90 days. That's what general average has been forever. Barry, what are you seeing? You're on mute.
So, I mean, the way we have it set up now, people only get a raise once a year, regardless. And the issue we are trying to deal with is, what do you do with someone who's hired February, March of that year? Are we going to give them a new increase? Now, one thing you could do, and we talked about this, was you could say, okay, they do get the July 1 increase, but then it's prorated like we had done for everybody this year. The issue that I had was, as Betsy described, that we don't want to have a situation where someone has to wait 22, 23 months to
Right.
get their first increase. We're in a different situation, and this is what I think you and I struggle with, Jay, is in the private sector, you can give a raise
Whenever you
pretty much
want.
anytime.
Yeah.
Here, we can't. There are limitations to what we can do because of the SAP. So this was sort of the compromise that we tried to come up with. It's not perfect. You're still asking people to wait, 15, 16 months to get an increase. But on the other hand, giving them an increase after a month or 2 months doesn't seem right. So I'm not sure there's a perfect solution. This is what we came up with.
I think we should keep with what we've already agreed to.
I was just throwing it out there. I mean, if we want to keep it, that's fine. Waiting that long, a year and a half to get a merit increase is a long time. And if they are waiting a year and a half, are we going to give them an extra increase for waiting that 6 month period? No. So
Was there a reason the board didn't want to prorate it? I'm just wondering, because that seems like a straightforward.
It seems pretty easy, right? It should be. Just prorate it from when they started.
They're also agreeing to it when they accept the job, they're agreeing to the terms of the SAP. So it's not like they don't know what they're getting into when they take the job. It's in writing, it's right there. Listen, you're hired on this date, so you're not going to get a raise until this date. You have to be here X amount of time, and that's it. You're not in the public, not in the private sector, you're in the public sector. So they know what the terms are when they take the position. So it's not like we're blindsiding them. They see it, it's in writing. So it's not an unknown thing for them when they accept the job. They're agreeing to it when they do that. So
The SAP says a raise every 12 months, and in some instances, it could be 15, 18 months before they get an increase.
That's wrong.
So it occurs to me that this issue has arisen because of the synchronization. It's an unintended consequence of the synchronization.
Yeah.
When we were discussing with Attorney Norris whether or not we could get rid of probationary period, and we kept it in because there were reasons to do so, but we got rid of the probationary 6-month increase, which was kind of automatic. And I remember Mr. Dietz saying, you hire someone, you pay them what they're worth, they don't need to get a probationary increase at 6 months.
Right.
But now we're saying they need to get a salary increase at 6 months. And I'm not really smart enough to figure out what the difference
Two
is.
things are totally different though.
Okay.
I don't think that's what, at least I wouldn't agree that's what's being said. I think it's the fact that, if an employee comes in, in February, they're not getting an increase for, 16, 17 months rather than in a 12-month period. And I may not, like I said, I may not have grasped everything Jay was going for, but the word prorating and trying to, to prorate an increase, at their 12-month period between, with the difference between that date and the July 1st date.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with the prorating. I think it's going to be difficult to explain to the employee in the offer letter how that works, but theoretically it makes sense, and it's consistent with what we have done for what we did do for everyone else last year. So if people want to go that way, I don't have a problem, and I certainly am sympathetic to the potential unfairness of someone having to wait such a long time to get an increase.
I mean, I would like to.
A question. I'd just like to ask a clarifying question. We went to synchronization because Mr. Dietz said this is what's done in the private sector. We have everybody eligible for their raise on one date, correct?
Yeah.
Crazy to have scattered dates. And so what you're saying, how you handle new hires is prorating.
Yeah.
If we're going to adopt one half of the private sector model, and I think actually Mr. Ballantyne contributed that other municipalities with which he was familiar, that a municipal, it doesn't have to be private sector, municipality can synchronize. And I think, Brian, I think you said one of your former towns that you worked for did.
That's correct.
Synchronize. All right, so synchronization is done. It's a good plan. It's great. We all like it. So the next step is to figure out how to handle the new hires, be appropriate. And what I'm hearing is to prorate. And Jay likes it, and Barry likes it, and Brian says it's not difficult to do. We're not putting a burden on payroll, correct? Am I correct?
Shouldn't be, no.
All right. So
you're only gonna have a few of them, very few of them.
All right. And Jay, are you saying, let's take the example of this poor guy. He's going to start in town. He's going to get into the Zoom room and start looking at a couple of meetings. What's his town? He's going to watch the personnel board meetings because he's an SAP employee. He's going to realize we've been talking about him for 6 months before he even got here. So, with respect,
Betsy, he's watching our meetings now anyway. He's been watching.
all right. Welcome, Jason. So, all right. We'll call him Bob. Bob is coming in on April 20th. Under the Jay Dietz approach, would he be eligible this July, Jay?
If he starts when?
April 20.
No, it's
Okay.
too soon.
When's
He
he
has to be at
eligible?
least 90 days back. He's not going to get a merit increase for being here for 60 days.
Okay, so how do we keep to a July 1st synchronization when you want to give Bill his raise when? Started on April 20th. We'll call
If
him
it's
Bill.
July 1st, then anybody that starts after March 31st would not be eligible for a merit increase that year.
All right, so how long does our employee, our hypothetical employee who's starting on April 20th, when is he eligible for a raise?
If he starts April 20th, he'd be eligible with everybody else.
July 1, 2022, which is what the letter said.
July 1st, 2021.
You just said he wasn't eligible.
He's 22. He's not eligible.
No, I think Jay's saying he's eligible, but as a prorated amount, right, Jay? Or, yeah,
Well,
No,
it's two
he's only
separate things, right?
days. He just said 60 days, he's not eligible.
right, so he would not be, right, so he would not be eligible for this year, right? So if he starts when, in April?
April,
If he starts in April, he's
hypothetical
not eligible
employee.
for July 22.
which
Oh,
is
because of the
what
90
we
days.
came up with and what the letter says, and what you're saying is unfair. So
I'm saying it's unfair to make them go 6 months back.
So you have to be here at least 90 days in every instance to get a raise on July 1st.
So the issue that you have is not the April 20 guy. You have an issue with the January or February. Say we have a hypothetical employee who starts January 20th.
Right, he would not get a raise for a year and a half.
Yeah, you want him or her, they, eligible on July 1st.
Yes,
So what you want to do is change this guidance to say you have to be an employee of the town for at least 3 months, 90 days.
Yep.
And
To
then
be
you'll be
eligible
eligible
for
for
a
a
merit
salary review prorated.
for a merit, yep, to be eligible for a merit increase, not prorated. If they're not working in the company, if they're not working for us for a minimum of 90 days, then they wait until the next cycle. So if this person,
Gotcha.
if they start until April,
Jay, it's not merit. It's not merit. Stop using the word merit. It's a salary increase. It's gonna
I
get very
understand.
confusing. It's not a merit increase, it's a salary increase.
it's
Okay.
the same thing in my world.
Well, I know, but that, we're not
Don't
in
even
your
go there.
world. We're in the town
All right.
world. We're not
One
in
at
your
a
world.
time, please. One at a time, please. Good point. Thank you, Dorian. So Jay, you would take this guidance that's in page 26 and you'd say new hires will be eligible for a salary review when they've been in the town employ for at least 3 months.
Yep.
And then the next line would say all new employees will be eligible for a salary review on July 1st. That comes out. And then we just have examples. So where does the prorating come in? I just want to make sure I understand that. If let's take the hypothetical employee, Bill, he started on January or February 20th of 2021. Bill is now eligible for a raise on July 1st, 2021, but there's no prorating.
Yeah, I think that's what Jay's saying. We're taking prorating out of the equation. We're just essentially changing the eligibility date from
Correct,
the end of the year until 3 months into the year.
correct.
Yep.
So all I'm doing is changing my examples and I'm saying employees hired between July 1st and yeah, I'm just changing the dates. Employee hired between July 1st, 2021 and whatever the dates are. And then the people that are hired in the last 3 months of the year are the ones who have to wait 15 months.
So it would be March 31st, right? Hired,
March, right, anybody hired
March
after
31st.
March 31st would not be eligible.
Is it the sense of the board to go in that direction? I can revise this document, run it by Jay and put something else in the packet. It
Well,
would
run it by
not,
everybody, as long as everybody's on board with it.
What?
Mark, what do you think? I mean, you're in the front line of all this.
You're saying we have to do this today, so we need to see what it is.
no, we don't need to do anything today. If we can't get it done today, we can't get it done today. We lose Jay in 10 minutes. We can I can only prepare as many things as I can and we can only do what we can do in 2 hours. I don't want to make the wrong decision because we have a cutoff of 2 hours.
Mark, what do you think?
I mean, I agree with the approach. I think it makes a little more sense than the January date.
Brian, are you good? Brian, are you okay? Does that work on your end?
I don't think it makes any difference to Brian what policy we set, right?
Oh, I thought you said Barry. I'm sorry.
Ryan,
No,
I'm still. I thought he froze.
I'm agreeing with Jay. That's why I thought he was talking to
I
Barry.
didn't even blink.
I know. So the threshold question was whether or not this changed the letter that was sent to the new hire, and it doesn't.
Huh.
I don't think we have to answer this question today. I don't think it changes the guidance to our department heads on getting their reviews done.
No.
Unless there's another new employee.
I just thought 6 months was too far out. You make it back 90 days. You take rid of, you don't have to worry about any of the prorating. It's just, if you're here within 90 days, you don't get your merit increase filters until the next merit cycle, 18 months later.
So why don't I
Whatever.
change this document, Jay? I'll run it by you and I'll put it in the packet. I don't foresee, Vanessa, are there other new, is this going to create a problem for any reviewers? Are there other new employees that we have questions about, if you know, or we can talk, you can
I
figure
mean,
this?
that have been hired just in the last few weeks?
No, I'm just saying, is there anybody else who's new within the year that this would affect? So a reviewer would say, do I have to do a review for X?
No, except for perhaps, the appointment of the town clerk's office that has just taken
Yeah,
place.
but again, that falls into the less than 3 months.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm
I
gonna,
don't think of anyone
The only
else.
thing I was bringing up on the prorating is on the annual bonus, where your annual bonus is prorated from whenever you start. And then you don't get an annual bonus if you, same thing, if you start after April or after March 31, you're not eligible for the annual bonus. Same.
It's not a bonus, though. We
have-
really need to be very careful of the words we're using, Jay. Sorry, don't mean to
Okay.
be a pain about it, but it's not a bonus and it's not a merit. It's a salary increase. It's a
Thank you. So
raise.
Jay, the
The annual
prorating,
bonus is different than the merit increase.
okay, Jay, in municipal world, you're talking about a concern that doesn't exist in Southborough. We don't have a bonus program. So am I understanding you correctly? I know it's hard on Zoom. Understand you correctly that you're concerned about prorating does
Nobody
not,
gets an annual nobody gets an annual bonus.
there's no bonuses in Southborough.
Oh, all right, then forget that.
If there are,
I thought there
under
was some
contract
somewhere.
or a union, they don't apply to SAP.
I wish there was.
Okay, so we're all good. I'm gonna revise this. And then the last piece of business that I have, and Jay, I know that you have to cut out, so our calendar is May 12th.
Yep. got it.
At noon. Was there a meeting that we were gonna start a little earlier, or was that the one that was canceled? Were we,
So next month is at 11.
did we just say 11? I wanna make sure we're clear on the record. Somebody had something that day or something? Okay, so our calendar, Jay, is May 12th at 11 and June 9th at our usual time of 12. Okay, we have one more order of business. It's under 5D2. As you heard me mention to Mr. Hegarty, I won't go back through it again. We talked about coming up with a policy on who are the part-time and seasonal employees that may or may not need evaluations. And it occurred to me when I went to set parameters that I didn't really know, and that I would like to talk to the department heads who have these employees. So if you would please consult your SAP schedules C and F. And as you have your liaison meetings, if you could get some feedback from your department heads. Thinking about the library, I don't know who our rep to the library is. I think Ryan would be a good person to talk, Director Donovan, talk to about who at the library. And I just thought we could set parameters by maybe hours worked per year. Who's the clerk's office? Who's my liaison with the clerk's office? Maybe that's me. Anyway, you all have a liaison list. Please consult that in conjunction with Schedule C and F. So who's the rec department?
Dave,
All
or
right.
Barry is? Okay.
Yeah. So Barry, I think most of this will fall on you if you want to discuss with Tim Davis. He's got all those Schedule F folks.
Yeah.
And then just let me know what you find out and we can put together a policy on this. And we can discuss this in May. I don't think it needs to be, it's going to come up because they're going to want to know if they need to do performance evaluations, but we'll just keep going. We'll plug away. We'll get as much done as we can. So any questions? Anybody have any other matters that have come up? All right. So I've got quite a bit of work to do, and I'll see you folks back here May 12th at 11 a.m. I hope everyone stays healthy.
You too.
All right. All right. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
I
All right.
Bye.
Vanessa, you want to hang around for 1 minute?